The great chamber stretched high above Daniel Harper's head, so tall that he could barely see the ceiling through the dim light. Around him, platforms floated in the air, each one holding a different alien species. Some looked like giant insects. Others resembled walking plants or creatures made of living metal. 300 different worlds had sent their people here, to this place where the galaxy made its decisions. Daniel stood on the human platform with his hands behind his back. He wore a simple gray suit, the kind that diplomats from Earth had worn for the past century. Next to him, Rachel Bennett checked her data tablet one more time. She had warned him this would not go well. Daniel had known it too, but they had to try. The chamber grew quiet. The session was about to begin. Shellax rose first from his platform. The Vraxian was nearly 3 meters tall, covered in dark red scales that caught the light. His yellow eyes looked down at Daniel with something that might have been amusement. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the translation devices that everyone wore. "The human delegation has requested expanded trade routes," Shellax said. His tone made it sound like a joke. "They also want a seat on the security directorate. I find this request very interesting." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not loud laughter, but the quiet kind that hurt more. Daniel did not move. He kept his face calm. Another voice joined in. This one belonged to a Zintheran, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish with too many eyes. "Humanity has been in space for only 100 years. They have colonies in less than 20 systems. My people control 4,000 systems. Why should we give them security responsibilities?" More laughter. Daniel noticed that Rachel's jaw had tightened. She hated this as much as he did, but they both stayed quiet. Let them talk. Let them say what they wanted to say. A Cathari representative spoke next. The Cathari looked almost human, except for their blue skin and the fact that they had 4 arms instead of 2. Earth's military consists of 300 ships. 300. The Cathari defense fleet has 12,000 vessels. How can they protect anyone when they cannot even protect themselves? The mockery continued for another 20 minutes. Different aliens took turns pointing out how small Earth was, how weak their technology seemed, how little they had accomplished compared to the great civilizations of the Council. Daniel listened to all of it. He had heard worse during the private meetings before this session. At least now it was out in the open. Then Ambassador Thex stood up. Thex belonged to the Confederation of Enlightened Worlds, a group that considered themselves the smartest species in the galaxy. He activated a holographic display that appeared in the center of the chamber for everyone to see. "Let us examine the facts," Thex said. His voice was smooth, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. "Human warships use kinetic weapons. They fire metal projectiles at their enemies. This is technology that most civilizations abandoned 5,000 years ago. Their ships move using fusion drives, another outdated system. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no quantum computers." The hologram showed images of human ships next to ships from the Confederation. The difference was clear. Human vessels looked simple, almost primitive. The Confederation ships gleamed with advanced technology. "Their largest warship is 800 meters long," Thex continued. "Our smallest battleship is 3 kilometers. They have 300 ships total. We have 30,000, and yet they come here asking to help protect the galaxy." The laughter this time was louder. Even some of the species that usually stayed neutral were chuckling. Daniel felt Rachel shift beside him, but he touched her arm gently. "Not yet." Thex was not finished. "I do not mean to be cruel," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Humanity is young. They will learn. They will grow, but they must understand their place. They are children in a galaxy of adults. Perhaps in another 1,000 years they will be ready to join us as equals. But not today." The chamber erupted in applause. Various aliens made sounds of agreement, each in their own language, creating a strange chorus that filled the massive room. Finally, the presiding officer, a being whose species Daniel had never learned to pronounce correctly, turned toward the human platform. "Ambassador Harper, you may respond." Daniel stepped forward. He looked around the chamber slowly, meeting as many eyes as he could. Then he spoke, his voice calm and clear. "We came here in peace," he said. "We came offering friendship and partnership. We have shared our resources, our knowledge, and our goodwill with many of you. We asked for nothing except to be treated as equals." He paused, letting his words settle. "But I see now that we made a mistake. We believed that the Council valued cooperation over pride. We believed that wisdom mattered more than age. and that capability mattered more than the size of one's fleet. Shalax laughed. Capability? What capability does Earth possess that we should respect? Daniel looked directly at the Vraxian. That is something you will have to discover on your own. The chamber grew quieter. Something in Daniel's tone had changed. Humanity has participated in the Galactic Council for 100 years. Daniel continued. We have followed every rule, respected every tradition, and honored every agreement. But respect must flow both ways. If the Council believes we have nothing to offer, then perhaps our time here is finished. Thex made a dismissive gesture with one of his appendages. Are you threatening to leave the Council? Please be realistic. Without Council protection, your little empire would not last a year. Pirates would raid your worlds. Hostile powers would take your colonies. You need us far more than we need you. Daniel picked up his data tablet. Rachel did the same. They had planned for this moment, had discussed it during the long flight to the Council station. Perhaps you are right, Daniel said. Or perhaps you will discover that you understood very little about humanity. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that he no longer felt but performed anyway. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Rachel followed him without a word. Behind them, the laughter grew louder. Shalax called out, Do not worry, little humans. You will come back. You always do. Where else can you go? Daniel did not turn around. He did not respond. He simply walked out of the chamber and let the door close behind him. In the hallway, Rachel finally spoke. That went exactly as we expected. Yes, Daniel said. Now we see if the plan works. They walked toward their ship in silence. Around them, the Council station continued its usual business. Aliens from hundreds of worlds moved through the corridors, trading goods and information, making deals and alliances. None of them paid attention to the two humans leaving. None of them noticed the small smile on Daniel Harper's face. Back in the chamber, the Council had already moved on to other business. The human problem, they believed, was solved. Earth would return within days, desperate and apologetic. It was always the same with young species. They needed to learn humility. But in a quiet corner of the chamber, one being watched the door where the humans had left. His name was Counselor Varix, and unlike the others, he had been paying close attention to Ambassador Harper's words. Something about the human's tone had bothered him. It was not the tone of a defeated diplomat. It was the tone of someone who had just made a decision. Varix made a note in his personal files to monitor Earth's activities over the next few days. Something felt wrong, though he could not explain why. Humans were weak, everyone knew that. But the look in Daniel Harper's eyes had not been the look of a weak man. It had been the look of someone who was done pretending. Counselor Varix woke to the sound of alarms. His neural interface flooded with messages, each one marked urgent. He pushed himself up from his rest chamber and activated the first message. It was from Admiral Krendar, his military liaison. We have a situation. Contact me immediately. Varix felt a chill run through his body. Krendar never used words like situation, unless something had gone terribly wrong. He opened a communication channel. What happened? Varix asked. Krendar's face appeared in the hologram. The Admiral looked tired, as if he had not slept. It's the humans. They're gone. Gone? What do you mean, gone? I mean every human ship in Etherian space has vanished. All 18 vessels. They disappeared 6 hours ago, all at the same time. Varix stood up fully now, his mind racing. Disappeared how? Did they jump to faster than light travel? No jump signatures. No warp trails, no debris. They were there on our sensors, and then they were not. It's like they never existed. While Varix was processing this information, more messages arrived. Similar reports from Cathari space, Vraxian territories, Intharan sectors. Everywhere humans had been, they were no longer there. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out. Admiral Krell of the Cathari Defense Fleet stood in his command center, staring at empty sensor screens. His tracking stations had maintained constant surveillance on human vessels in Cathari space. The humans were always careful, always following the rules. So the Cathari had stopped paying close attention. That had been a mistake. Show me the recording from Station 47, Krell ordered. A junior officer brought up the sensor logs. The display showed 6 human cargo ships moving through normal space, heading toward a Cathari trade hub. The timestamp read 0347 Galactic Standard Time. The ships moved at regular speed, their engines glowing in the infrared spectrum. Then at 03:48 they were gone. Not fading away, not exploding, simply gone as if someone had erased them from reality. Play it again, Krell said. They watched it 5 times. Each time the result was the same. One moment the ships existed. The next moment they did not. There was no energy spike, no gravitational distortion, no quantum fluctuation, nothing that would explain how 6 massive vessels could vanish in the space of 1 second. Check all the other stations, Krell ordered. Tell me if any human ship remains in our space. 20 minutes later the answer came back. Not a single human vessel remained in Cathari territory. 43 ships had vanished simultaneously at 03:48. On the trade station called Apex Crossing, the station master named Delvix arrived at his office to find a sealed door. The human embassy, which had been opened just yesterday, was now locked tight. A message played on repeat outside the door. The Earth embassy has been permanently closed. All staff have been recalled. Thank you for your cooperation. Delvix tried to override the door locks. Nothing happened. He called security to break down the door. When they finally got inside, they found empty rooms. Every piece of furniture, every computer, every document was gone. The walls were bare. Even the carpets had been removed. In one room, they found a single object. It was a small plant in a pot. An earth plant that the ambassador had kept on her desk. Next to it was a handwritten note. Thank you for the hospitality. We will not forget. The note was signed by Lisa Martinez, the Earth ambassador. Delvix stood in the empty embassy for a long time, trying to understand. The embassy had been occupied just 12 hours ago. He had seen Ambassador Martinez in the hallway yesterday evening. She had smiled and wished him a good night. Now she was gone, along with her entire staff, their families, and everything they owned. How do you evacuate an entire embassy in one night without anyone noticing? The reports kept coming. Human colonies were empty, not destroyed, not damaged, just empty. The buildings stood intact. The power still ran, the automated systems continued working. But every single human was gone. A Vraxian patrol ship arrived at the human colony on New Boston, one of Earth's 20 colonial worlds. The colony housed 40,000 people. The patrol ship's commander had orders to check on the colony after the mysterious disappearances elsewhere. The commander, a veteran named Skell, had expected to find panic or confusion. Instead, he found silence. His team landed in the main settlement. The streets were clean and empty. Homes stood with their doors closed. Vehicles sat parked in neat rows. The power plant hummed with activity, generating energy for a city that no longer had any inhabitants. Check the residential areas, Skell ordered. His soldiers spread out, entering homes and buildings. Each one came back with the same report. Empty. Beds were made. Dishes were cleaned and put away. Personal belongings were gone, but the furniture remained. It looked like 40,000 people had packed their most important possessions and then simply walked away. Except there were no ships. The colony's spaceport showed no recent launches. The hangar bays held maintenance equipment and spare parts, but no vessels capable of moving 40,000 people. Commander, one of his soldiers called. You need to see this. Skell followed the soldier to the colony's administrative building. In the main office, they found a computer still running. On the screen was a message. To whoever finds this, we thank the Galactic Council for allowing us to establish this colony. We have left all infrastructure intact for future use. The colony is yours if you want it. We will not be returning. The message was dated the same night that Daniel Harper had walked out of the council chamber. By the time the emergency council session convened, the full scope of the situation was clear. Every human in council space had vanished. Nearly 500,000 people gone without a trace. Hundreds of ships disappeared. 20 colony worlds abandoned, and Earth itself had gone dark. The solar system, humanity's home, no longer responded to any communication. Probes sent toward Earth disappeared at the system's edge. Long-range sensors showed the planets were still there, still orbiting their star. But something was blocking all attempts to observe or contact them. Ambassador Shellac stood before the council, no longer laughing. How is this possible? How do you move 500,000 people without anyone noticing? No one had an answer. Thex of the Confederation activated his own display. I have analyzed the energy requirements for such an operation. To move that many people and ships simultaneously across hundreds of light years would require more power than most civilizations generate in a year. The humans do not have that kind of power. We have seen their infrastructure. It's primitive. Then how did they do it? Another counselor demanded. Silence filled the chamber. Counselor Varix finally spoke. Perhaps we did not see their infrastructure as clearly as we thought. This statement hung in the air. Other counselors shifted uncomfortably. The implications were troubling. Are you suggesting the humans lied to us? Shalax asked. I am suggesting we may have seen what they wanted us to see, Varix replied. A Zintheran intelligence officer entered the chamber and approached the presiding officer. They spoke in quiet tones. Then the presiding officer's expression changed. He looked shaken. We have received a preliminary report from our intelligence services, the presiding officer announced. It seems there are inconsistencies in the records. What kind of inconsistencies? Thex asked. Ship identification records. Over the past 50 years, various member states have logged encounters with human vessels. When our analysts compiled these records, they found something unusual. The humans reported having 300 military ships, but we have documented encounters with over 2,000 distinct human warships, each with unique identification codes. The chamber erupted in confused voices. Thex shook his head. That's impossible. We watched their shipyards. We know their production capacity. They cannot build that many ships, and yet the records exist, the presiding officer said. Multiple sources, multiple confirmations. Either our people have been documenting phantom ships for 50 years, or the humans have far more vessels than they claimed. Admiral Krell stepped forward. I have more. My analyst reviewed the energy signatures from human ship engines. The signatures do not match their reported technology. Human ships supposedly use fusion drives, but the actual readings suggest something far more advanced, deliberately modified to appear primitive. Another counselor brought up combat records. 3 years ago, a human patrol ship engaged pirates near the border of Confederation space. The pirates were destroyed. The official report said the human ship used kinetic weapons, but I have reviewed the sensor data. The damage to the pirate vessels is inconsistent with kinetic impacts. It looks more like directed energy weapons, but using principles we do not understand. The reports continued, each one adding another piece to a puzzle that was becoming clearer and more frightening. Humanity had not been truthful about their capabilities. But the scale of the deception was staggering. It would require coordination across decades, involving every human ship, every human diplomat, every human colony. Why would an entire species pretend to be weak? Ambassador Thex, who had mocked the humans just days ago, now looked at the data with growing concern. If they were lying about their ships and weapons, what else were they lying about? No one answered, because no one knew. In the empty human embassy on Apex Crossing, Station Master Delvik sat alone in the bare room, looking at the plant and the note. He read the words again. We will not forget. It did not sound like a threat. It did not sound like anger. It sounded like a simple statement of fact. Humanity would remember this moment, remember how the Council had treated them. And somehow, that was more frightening than any threat could have been. Kevin Murphy had been the first to notice something was wrong. He worked as a junior analyst at Earth's Intelligence Bureau, a job that mostly involved reading reports and filing them properly. It was boring work, but Kevin was good at noticing patterns. 3 days before the council meeting, he had been organizing old ship manifests when he found something strange. A cargo vessel named the Margaret Day had been reported destroyed by pirates 15 years ago, but 2 years after that reported destruction, Kevin found a customs record showing the Margaret Day delivering supplies to a human colony. He checked again. Maybe it was a different ship with the same name. But the identification codes matched perfectly. The same ship, supposedly destroyed, had appeared alive and well years later. Kevin found 6 more examples within an hour. Then 20. Then 50. Ships that were reported destroyed or decommissioned, but which kept appearing in various records across the years. He had reported this to his supervisor, who had immediately called a meeting. Kevin never learned what happened after that meeting, but he noticed that all the evidence he had found was classified the next day. Now, as the Council scrambled to understand humanity's disappearance, other analysts across the galaxy were making similar discoveries. The Cathari military kept detailed records of every ship they encountered. They had been doing this for 3,000 years. It was a matter of pride for them. When Admiral Krell ordered a complete review of all human encounters, his analysts worked for 3 days straight. The report they delivered made Krell's blood run cold. We have visual confirmations of 2001. 147 distinct human warships over the past 50 years, the lead analyst reported. Each one had unique identification codes, unique hull configurations, and unique crew complements. These cannot be the same 300 ships appearing multiple times. Could they be civilian vessels misidentified as military? Krell asked. No, sir. These were clearly military vessels. Armed, armored, and operating in formation. The humans claim to have 300 warships. Our records show at least 2,000. And that's only the ones we happened to observe. There could be more we never saw. Krell looked at the data himself. The analyst was right. Unless the Cathari military had been hallucinating for 50 years, the humans had lied about the size of their fleet. Lied significantly, but why? What purpose did it serve? At the Confederation of Enlightened Worlds, their scientists were asking the same question. Thex had ordered a complete review of all human technology assessments. What they found troubled him deeply. A research team presented their findings in a sealed conference room. The lead scientist, whose name translated roughly to Observer Prime, displayed a series of images. This is a human frigate that we examined 10 years ago, Observer Prime explained. The humans had decommissioned it and sold it to a scrapping facility. We purchased the wreck through intermediaries to study their technology. The image showed a medium-sized warship, battered and old. We confirmed the ship used fusion drives, kinetic weapons, and basic computing systems, all primitive by our standards. We documented everything and filed our report. Observer Prime brought up another image. This one showed the same ship's engine compartment, but with different scanning equipment. Last week, we rescanned our original data using newer analysis tools. Look at this. The image showed the fusion reactor, but when Observer Prime applied a quantum filter to the image, something else appeared underneath. The fusion reactor's outer casing was real, but inside there was something completely different. Something that operated on principles the Confederation did not understand. The entire engine was a fake, Observer Prime said quietly. Or rather, it was real enough to pass basic inspections, but underneath it was something else. Something far more advanced. They built an entire false engine around the real one, just to fool anyone who looked. Thex felt sick. How many ships did we examine? 7 over the years. I have asked other teams to rescan their data. Preliminary results suggest all 7 ships had similar hidden technology. 7 ships, Thex repeated. They built 7 fake ships just to deceive us. Not fake, Ambassador. Those ships were functional. They could operate as primitive fusion vessels if needed. But they also had the real technology hidden inside. The level of engineering required to do this is extraordinary, and the dedication to maintain the deception for decades is beyond anything we have seen. Similar discoveries were happening across Council space. A Vraxian xeno-engineer had been analyzing the abandoned human embassy's power generator. What she found made her question everything she thought she knew. The generator was labeled as a standard fusion reactor, 1 megawatt output, typical for a small diplomatic facility. The paperwork was perfect. The energy signatures matched. But when she opened the casing, she found something that made no sense. Inside was not a fusion reactor. Inside was a device the size of a briefcase that produced the same energy output. The rest of the space was filled with what appeared to be a dummy fusion reactor, complete with fake radiation shielding and coolant systems. It would fool any inspector who did not physically open the casing. But why build a fake reactor around a real power source? The only answer was deception. The humans wanted everyone to believe they used primitive fusion technology, when in reality they had something far better. How many other things had they faked? At the council station, Councillor Varix was collecting all these reports. Each one painted the same picture. Humanity had been lying about everything. Their ships, their weapons, their technology, all of it was more advanced than they had claimed. But Varix was starting to see a deeper pattern. He called in a xenopsychologist named Dr. Kelvin. "Tell me about humans," Varix said. "What do we know about their psychology?" Dr. Kelvin settled into a chair. "Humans are cautious but curious. They value knowledge and exploration. They form strong social bonds and have a powerful sense of fairness. When they believe they have been wronged, they remember it. What about their strategic thinking? Excellent. Human history is full of examples where they defeated stronger opponents through deception and clever tactics. They have a saying about it. Something about speaking softly but carrying a big stick. Varric nodded slowly. So if humans wanted to hide their true capabilities, they would be good at it. Very good at it. And they would have the patience to maintain the deception for a long time. But why deceive us at all? What did they gain? Dr. Kelvin thought about this. Perhaps they were testing us. Humans value character and integrity. They often test others to see how they will react. Maybe appearing weak was a way to see how we would treat a weaker species. The implications of this settled over Varric like a cold blanket. If Dr. Kelvin was right, then the past century had been a test. Humanity had pretended to be weak and primitive to see if the Council would help them or mock them. To see if the Council valued cooperation or only respected strength. The Council had failed that test badly. Varric pulled up another file, this one from the archives. It was a report from 40 years ago about a human exploration ship. The ship had been found near a dead world in unclaimed space. A Zintheran patrol had encountered them. The Zintheran captain's log was still on file. Encountered human exploration vessel near barren planet designated Z4471. Humans stated they were conducting archaeological survey. Wished them success and continued patrol. Varric ran a search on planet Z4471. It took time, but he found what he was looking for. Ancient records indicated the planet had once been inhabited by the precursors, the galaxy's previous dominant species. The precursors had vanished 12,000 years ago, leaving behind ruins and artifacts that even now surpassed Council technology. Varric felt his heart rate increase. He searched for more human exploration missions. The pattern was obvious once he looked for it. Humans had been visiting precursor sites, dozens of them, hundreds of them, always claiming to be doing archaeological research, always in places the Council had already surveyed and dismissed as uninteresting. He pulled up the locations of the 20 human colony worlds. Each one was near a precursor site, not near in the cosmic sense, but near enough that a ship could reach it within days. The humans had not chosen their colonies for resources or strategic location. They had chosen them to be close to ancient ruins. Varric called an emergency meeting with the Council's top members. He presented his findings in a secure room where no one else could hear. I believe the humans found something in the precursor ruins, Varric said, something significant, and they have been hiding it from us for decades, maybe longer. Shalax, who was present at the meeting, shook his head. The precursors died out 12,000 years ago. Their ruins are mostly rubble. We have teams that study them. They find interesting artifacts sometimes, but nothing that would explain this. Maybe we did not look hard enough, Varric replied. Or maybe the humans knew where to look. We have assumed the precursors left randomly scattered ruins. What if they did not? What if they left specific things in specific places meant to be found by the right species? The room fell silent. Thek spoke up. Are you suggesting the precursors left behind advanced technology and the humans found it? I am suggesting it as a possibility. It would explain how a species that was barely spacefaring a century ago now has technology that surpasses ours. They did not develop it themselves. They found it. Admiral Krell pulled up a star chart. The humans visited 143 systems over the past 2 centuries. If we mark those systems, he highlighted them in red. And then we overlay known precursor sites. The map filled with blue dots. Nearly every red mark was near a blue dot. They were not exploring randomly, Krell said quietly. They were following a map. They knew where to look. Another counselor, one from a species that rarely spoke, asked the question they were all thinking. If the humans found precursor technology, what else did they find? The precursors were capable of things we still do not understand. They built structures that have lasted 12,000 years without maintenance. They had power sources we cannot replicate. They traveled between galaxies. What if the humans found the secret to all of that? No one had an answer. Varric looked at the star chart, had all those red marks showing where humans had been. Then he noticed something else. There were gaps in the pattern, places where human ships should have visited based on the map of precursor sites, but where no visits were recorded. These gaps here, Varric said, pointing to several empty spaces. There are precursor sites here, but no record of human visits. Maybe they never went there, Shellac suggested. Or maybe, Varric replied, they went there secretly. Maybe those sites were so important that they did not want anyone to know about them. He zoomed in on one of the gaps. It was near the edge of Council space, in a region that few ships visited. According to old surveys, there was nothing there of interest, just dead planets orbiting a dying star. But according to ancient records that few people bothered to read anymore, it had once been a major precursor world. "We need to send a ship there," Varric said. Within 6 hours, a fast scout vessel was on its way. It would take 3 days to reach the system. Varric hoped they would find nothing. He hoped his fears were wrong, but deep down he knew they were not wrong. The humans had found something. Something big enough that they built an entire false civilization around it to keep it secret. And now they had taken that secret and disappeared. The scout ship arrived at the system 3 days later. Captain Vorak, a veteran Vraxian officer, reviewed the sensor data as they approached. The system was just as the old surveys had described it. A red giant star slowly dying, 3 dead planets in close orbit, and a debris field where a 4th planet had once been. "Nothing here," his sensor officer reported. "No artificial structures, no energy signatures, no signs of recent activity." Vorak frowned. He had been told to search carefully, that this might be important. "Scan for buried structures. Use deep penetration sensors." The officer adjusted the equipment. Minutes passed. Then the display lit up with contacts. "Sir, I'm reading massive underground structures on the 2nd planet. They're deep, over 2 kilometers below the surface, and they're showing residual energy signatures." Vorak felt his scales tingle. "How residual?" "Days old, maybe weeks. Something was active here recently, then shut down." They landed near the largest energy signature. The surface was barren rock and dust, nothing living, nothing moving. Vorak led a team down in full environmental suits. They carried drilling equipment and scanning gear. It took 6 hours to drill down to the structure. What they found made Vorak immediately send a priority message back to the Council. The chamber they uncovered was huge, carved from solid rock. But it was not empty. Along the wall stood massive machines, each one the size of a building. They were covered in the distinctive markings of the precursors, but they looked maintained, almost new. "These should be 12,000 years old," Vorak's engineer said. "But look at this. No corrosion, no decay. It's like they were built yesterday." Vorak walked deeper into the chamber. At the far end, he found what looked like a control station. And next to it, he found something that made his blood run cold. Fresh tool marks. Human tool marks. Recent ones. "They were here," Vorak said quietly. "The humans were here, and they activated these machines." The engineer examined the machines more closely. "Sir, these are not just artifacts. These are still functional. Whatever the precursors built here, it still works." Back at the Council station, Varric received Vorak's report. He read it 3 times, then called another emergency meeting. "The humans have been excavating precursor sites," Varric told the assembled counselors. "Not just studying them. Excavating them, reactivating them, and learning from them. For how long, we do not know. But we can now confirm it has been happening." Shalax looked at the images from Vorak's mission. "What were these machines for?" "We do not know yet, but our engineers are trying to understand them." More reports came in over the following days. The Cathari found similar excavations in their territory, sites that humans had visited years ago and then carefully reburied. The Confederation discovered that a human research station they had thought was studying mineral deposits was actually positioned directly above a massive precursor facility. Each discovery added to the picture. Humanity had not stumbled upon a few precursor artifacts by chance. They had conducted a systematic, organized search across hundreds of systems. They had found, excavated, and studied more precursor technology than the entire Council combined had examined in 1,000 years. But why hide it? Why not share the knowledge? A Zintheron researcher named Dr. Helna proposed an answer. She had been studying human scientific publications for the past 20 years, reading papers that human scientists had written about various topics. Most were mundane, discussing basic research and discoveries. But Dr. Helna noticed a pattern. "Look at this paper from 80 years ago," she told a small group of researchers. A human xenoarchaeologist named Nicole Chen published a study about precursor power generation systems. She described the theoretical principles behind how precursor reactors might have worked. She brought up another document. "This is a human patent filed 60 years ago for a new type of fusion reactor. Look at the underlying mathematics. They are identical to what Nicole Chen described." The researchers looked at the equations. Dr. Halna was right. The match was perfect. The humans were not just studying the precursors, Dr. Halna continued. They were reverse engineering precursor technology and then claiming it as their own invention. This paper here, this patent there, each one a small piece of something much larger. No one noticed because the pieces were scattered across decades in different fields of research. She brought up dozens more examples. Human advances in material science that matched precursor construction techniques. Human developments in quantum computing that paralleled precursor data systems. Human breakthroughs in propulsion that aligned perfectly with precursor ship designs. They hid their discoveries in plain sight, Dr. Halna said. They published just enough to seem like they were making normal scientific progress, but they never revealed the true source. And no one questioned it because humans were supposed to be primitive. We expected them to be slow learners. The implications were staggering. If humans had been reverse engineering precursor technology for a century, then everything the Council thought it knew about human capabilities was wrong. The primitive fusion drives were fake. The simple kinetic weapons were fake. The modest fleet size was fake. All of it was a mask hiding something far more advanced. But there was still a bigger question. Admiral Krell asked it during one of the endless analysis meetings. Why did the precursors leave all this technology behind? They were the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever seen. They controlled half the galaxy. Then they vanished, leaving their technology intact. Why? No one had a good answer to that question. The precursors had been gone for 12,000 years. Their ruins were scattered across thousands of worlds. But they had left no message, no explanation. They had simply disappeared. As completely as the humans had just disappeared, or had they left a message? Counselor Varix was thinking about this late one night when he remembered something. An old document filed away in the archives that almost no one had read. It was a report from a precursor research team from 3,000 years ago. They had found something carved into the walls of a precursor facility, something that looked like writing. Varix searched the archives until he found it. The document included images of the carvings. At the time, no one could read them. Precursor language was not fully understood. But the research team had noted that the carvings appeared to be repeated in many precursor sites, always in the same place, always with the same urgency. Varix looked at the images now with new eyes. The carvings showed a spiral galaxy, their galaxy, and at the edge of the spiral, something was marked in red, a vast area of space growing larger over time. Below the image was more text, still unreadable. But at the bottom was a symbol that every species recognized. It was the universal symbol for danger, warning, threat. The precursors had not vanished by choice. They had left. And they had left behind a warning. Varix felt cold realization wash over him. He pulled up a current star chart and compared it to the ancient precursor carving. The red area in the precursor image matched a region of space on the modern chart. A region where, over the past 5,000 years, every single star system had gone dark. Hundreds of thousands of systems, silent and empty. The Council had noticed this phenomenon but had assumed it was natural. Old stars dying, civilizations collapsing on their own. No one had considered that something might be causing it. That something might be systematically moving through the galaxy, consuming or destroying everything in its path. The precursors had known. They had seen it coming. And they had left behind their technology as a defense, hoping that future civilizations would find it and understand the warning. Humanity had found it. They had understood. Varix presented his findings to the Council the next morning. He showed them the ancient carvings, the star charts, the expanding dead zone at the galaxy's edge. He explained what he believed had happened. The chamber was silent when he finished. Finally, Thex spoke. You are saying the precursors left because something was coming. Something dangerous enough to make them abandon the galaxy. Yes. And the humans found evidence of this threat. Yes. How long have they known? Varix pulled up another document. Nicole Chen, the xenoarchaeologist who published all those papers about precursor technology, wrote something interesting in one of her last papers. It was published 50 years ago. She mentioned finding a precursor facility in Antarctica, buried under ice. She described it as the most significant find in human history. But she never published any follow-up papers. She went dark for 20 years, then died in an accident. What was in that facility? Shellax asked. We do not know, but I believe it contained the precursor's warning. I believe it told the humans what was coming. And I believe humanity has spent the last 50 years preparing for it, while pretending to be a weak, Primitive species, so no one would interfere with their preparations. Admiral Krell brought up the military reports again. The humans claimed 300 ships. We now know they have at least 2,000, probably more. If they have been building in secret for 50 years using precursor technology, how many ships do they actually have? No one knew, but the number was clearly much higher than anyone had imagined. What else did they build? Another counselor asked. Ships we know about because we saw them. But what about weapons we never saw? Defenses we never detected? The precursors had technology we still cannot match. If the humans have been learning from them for 50 years, the sentence hung unfinished in the air. Varix looked around the chamber at the frightened faces. We ridiculed them. We mocked their small fleet and primitive weapons. And all along they were building something powerful enough to face whatever destroyed the precursors. Not destroyed, Dr. Halna corrected quietly. The precursors left. They saw what was coming and decided they could not stop it. So they left, and they left their technology behind for whoever came next. The humans found it first. The weight of this settled over the council. They had spent a century looking down at humanity, treating them like ignorant children who needed guidance, and humanity had let them believe it. While the council had been laughing, humanity had been preparing for a war that was coming, a war the council knew nothing about. The transmission arrived on day 27 after humanity vanished. It came without warning, appearing simultaneously at every council facility, every government building, and every military headquarters across council space. The signal was strong, clear, and used a protocol that the council had never seen before. Counselor Varix was in a meeting when every screen in the room suddenly activated. Others reported the same thing happening across the station. No one had authorized this transmission. No one could block it. It simply appeared as if it had always been there. The image resolved into the figure of a human man in a military uniform. He stood on what appeared to be a ship's bridge, but the technology visible behind him was nothing like the primitive human vessels the council had observed. Through the viewports behind him, hundreds of massive ships could be seen in formation, each one easily 5 kilometers long, dwarfing anything the council racers had built. I am Admiral Brandon Cole of the Earth Defense Fleet, the man said. His voice was calm, almost friendly. I apologize for this unannounced transmission, but given recent events, I felt it was necessary to clarify humanity's position. Brandon paused, as if gathering his thoughts. 3 weeks ago, Ambassador Daniel Harper walked out of the Galactic Council after your representatives made clear that humanity was not welcome as an equal partner. That decision, while disappointing, helped us make our own decision. A decision we have been debating for nearly a century. Behind Brandon, the camera pulled back slightly, showing more of the bridge. The crew working at their stations looked professional and calm. This was not a hastily assembled message. This had been planned. I should start by thanking the council, Brandon continued. For 100 years you allowed us to maintain our presence in your space. You tolerated our embassies, our trade missions, and our colonies. For that, we are grateful. We tried to be good neighbors even when you did not respect us. His tone was not angry. If anything, he sounded sad. But I also need to be honest with you. Humanity has not been completely truthful about who we are and what we are capable of. This deception was necessary, and I hope you will understand why. Brandon gestured to someone off-screen. The display changed, showing an image of Earth's ice-covered Antarctica. 214 years ago, a research team found something buried under 3 kilometers of ice. They thought it was a meteorite at first. It took them 6 months to excavate. What they found was a structure ancient beyond measure, built by the species you call the precursors. The image changed to show the interior of the facility, vast chambers filled with strange machines. Inside this structure we found many things. Technology we barely understood, power systems that seemed impossible, and most importantly, we found a message. The precursors had left it there, hoping someone would find it. Another image appeared. This one showed the carved warning that Varix had found in the archives, but clearer, more detailed. The message was a warning. The precursors told us that something was coming, something that had driven them to abandon this galaxy 12,000 years ago, something that was still out there, still moving through the cosmos, consuming everything in its path. Brandon's expression grew more serious. The message included coordinates, locations where the precursors had built defensive installations, weapons platforms, and shield generators. They had tried to stop this threat and failed, but they left behind their technology, hoping that whoever came next might succeed where they had not. The display showed a star chart. The defensive installations formed a massive arc along one edge of the galaxy, a barrier stretching across thousands of light years. We spent the next century doing two things. First, we searched for every precursor site we could find. We excavated them, studied them, learned from them. Second, we reactivated the defensive installations. We repaired what was broken, upgraded what we could, and filled in the gaps with our own constructions. Brandon looked directly into the camera. This work required secrecy. We could not risk interference. We could not risk panic. So we hid what we were doing. We pretended to be weak, primitive, barely capable of spaceflight. We built fake ships with fake technology to show you what you expected to see, while our real ships, our real fleet, was being constructed in hidden shipyards far from Council space. The image changed to show those hidden shipyards, massive structures in deep space, each one building vessels that dwarfed anything the Council had. We maintained this deception for 100 years. Every human diplomat, every human trader, every human scientist, all of them knew the truth and kept the secret. We did this because we had to know something about you. Brandon paused again, and this time his expression showed disappointment. We had to know if the Council would help a weaker species prepare for danger. Would you share resources? Would you offer support? Or would you only respect strength? We needed to understand who you were before we could trust you with the truth about what is coming. His words hung in the air like an accusation. 3 weeks ago, you gave us our answer. When humanity asked for help, asked to be treated as equals, you laughed. You mocked our small fleet, our primitive technology, our short history. You made it clear that you valued power over partnership and strength over cooperation. Brandon's voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now. So we made our decision. Humanity is withdrawing from Council space entirely. We are sealing our borders and focusing on the work that must be done. The defensive perimeter is nearly complete. We estimate we have between 20 and 40 years before the threat arrives at our border. That is not much time. The star chart appeared again, showing the defensive line in green and Council space in blue. Beyond the defensive line, marked in red, was the expanding dead zone. This is what the precursors were running from. Over the past 12,000 years, it has consumed approximately 300,000 star systems. Every civilization in those systems is gone. Not conquered, not relocated, gone. Erased as if they never existed. The image zoomed in on the edge of the dead zone. Even through the transmission, the wrongness of it was visible. Space itself seemed darker there, emptier. The precursors called it the consuming void. We do not know what it is. A species? A phenomenon? A weapon left over from some ancient war? The precursors never figured it out. They only knew it could not be stopped by conventional means. So they built defenses based on principles that most civilizations consider impossible. Brandon turned slightly, gesturing to the ships visible through the viewports. These vessels are built using precursor technology. They are powered by systems that draw energy from dimensional folds. They are armed with weapons that manipulate space and time. They can move faster than light without using traditional warp drives. Each one is capable of destroying a planet if necessary. He let that sink in. We have 5,000 of these ships completed, with another 3,000 under construction. We have activated 700 precursor defense platforms. We have established shield generators that can protect entire star systems, and we have been preparing our people, training them, getting them ready for what is coming. The image returned to Brandon's face. The Council is welcome to join us. We have not abandoned you out of spite or anger. We have simply accepted that we cannot convince you to take this threat seriously, unless you see it with your own eyes. So we are offering you a chance to see. New coordinates appeared on the screen. These coordinates mark a neutral location outside both Council and human space. Send your representatives there. Send your military observers. Send your scientists. We will show you everything. The precursor ruins, the defensive installations, and most importantly, we will show you what is coming. Brandon's expression softened slightly. We do not want to face this alone. We would prefer to have allies, partners who understand what is at stake. But we will not allow Council politics to interfere with our preparations. We will not waste time trying to prove ourselves to people who have already decided we are not worth listening to. He took a breath. However, I must be clear about one thing. Human space is now sealed. We have established a defensive perimeter around our territory. Any ship that attempts to enter without permission will be turned back. Any ship that refuses to turn back will be disabled. We do not want conflict, but we will not allow interference. The star chart appeared one more time, showing the full scope of what humanity had built. The defensive line stretched across a quarter of the galaxy. Behind it, human territory was marked in gold. It was far larger than the 20 systems the Council had thought humanity controlled. There were hundreds of systems, maybe thousands, all hidden behind layers of stealth technology that had fooled the Council for decades. "Your scans will not penetrate our borders," Brandon said. "Your probes will not return. Your spies will not find anything. We learned from the precursors how to hide in plain sight. We have had a century to perfect it." He looked one more time at the camera, and there was genuine sadness in his eyes. "We came to the Council in friendship. We offered cooperation and partnership. You rejected that offer, so now we make a different offer. Come to the coordinates we have provided. See the truth. Understand what is coming. Then decide if you want to help us stop it, or if you prefer to face it alone." Brandon started to end the transmission, then paused. "One more thing. Ambassador Harper asked me to relay a message to Counselor Varix. He wants you to know that you were right to be suspicious. He also wants you to know that humanity does not blame the Council for its response. You acted according to your nature, just as we acted according to ours. But he hopes you will consider the possibility that there are more important things than pride and politics." The transmission ended. Every screen across Council space went dark simultaneously, returning to normal function as if nothing had happened. In the Council chamber, silence reigned. Every counselor sat frozen, trying to process what they had just seen and heard. The ships alone would have been shocking. The revelation about precursor technology would have been world-changing. But the threat, the consuming void that changed everything, Shellax was the first to speak. Is it possible? Could such a threat really exist? Admiral Krell pulled up the star charts, comparing Brandon's data to the Council's own records. The dead zone is real. We have documented it for thousands of years. We always assumed it was natural stellar death. But if you look at the pattern, at the rate of expansion, it is too uniform to be natural. Something is causing it. Thax looked ill. We have ignored the most serious threat in galactic history because we assumed the humans were too primitive to know anything important. Not just ignored, Varric said quietly. We mocked them. We laughed at them when they tried to warn us. They never tried to warn us, another counselor protested. Did they not? Varric replied. How many times did humans ask about the precursors? How many times did they request access to ancient sites? How many times did they try to discuss long-term galactic security? We dismissed every attempt because we thought they were being naive. The council chamber fell into chaos as everyone tried to talk at once. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for accepting humanity's invitation. A few insisted the entire thing was an elaborate hoax. Varric watched it all with a heavy heart. The council had failed a test it had not known it was taking. And the consequences of that failure might be the end of everything. Outside the chamber, across thousands of worlds, similar reactions played out. Some species immediately dispatched ships to the coordinates Brandon had provided. Others refused to believe the threat was real. Some tried to send military forces toward human space, testing Brandon's warning about sealed borders. Those ships were gently but firmly turned back by vessels that appeared from nowhere, demonstrating capabilities that made the watching militaries very nervous. Humanity had shown its hand at last. The weak newcomers were gone, replaced by something powerful and frightening. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, behind the defensive line that humanity had spent a century building, Admiral Brandon Cole stood on his bridge and hoped the council would make the right choice. Because the consuming void was coming, and humanity could not stop it alone.